Have you ever heard about the Winchester Mystery House before? Apparently, this tourist attraction is the most haunted house in America. Now, I'm sure most of you would agree with me here that that is a pretty ballsy description, because if we can prove that the most haunted house in America doesn't actually have any ghosts, then surely that means that no house in America has any ghosts. Well, one can only dream, because logic does not apply to paranormal stories. Some other house down the road will just become the new most haunted house in America until we debunk that one too. But yeah, this 24,000 square foot mansion is apparently one of the most famously haunted houses in the world, boasting over 160 rooms, 47 fireplaces, and 1,000 ghosts. This is exactly the type of place a paranormal researcher could finally prove to the world that ghosts are real. Sadly, we are still waiting. Take all the time you need with that one. In the meantime, we'll be over here talking about why this place is not actually haunted. Now, here is just a very basic overview of the urban legend. The original owner, Sarah Winchester, was told by a medium that she was haunted by the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles. This medium reportedly told her,
"You are cursed."
And he told Sarah that she must move west and build a house continuously or she would die. Now, apparently, the spirits of the damned demanded a house that was never finished and worked on constantly 24 hours a day for 38 years straight. A very specific list of demands. I wonder what else was on that list of demands.
I need a blimp, Hall of Fame induction this year, as my personal assistant, my personal camera boy, Triple H pointing photo, those famous ones that he does.
Okay.
And a face on all of the trucks. You can have that, so you do not forget it.
Why is it soggy?
Well, I fell on the toilet.
I'm a big fan of this guy, I'm not gonna lie. Danhausen is officially my favorite wrestler. Let's get serious again. Now, also apparently, this bizarre layout, such as the doors on the second story just leading to a fall to your death, and some staircases just leading to the ceiling, was done intentionally to confuse the spirits. Kinda like the mansion from Resident Evil. Now, we can only imagine the conversations the ghosts were having while touring this mansion looking for Sarah. Probably went a little like this.
But just take a look at this. Oh my God.
It's awful.
I can't believe, what the hell is this place anyway?
However, what's kind of weird here is very much like Mr. X or Nemesis, the souls of the damned were very easily able to find Sarah no problem after she moved west, but then just couldn't find her inside this house. Was she in the bedroom? Was she in the kitchen? Was she in the safe room saving her progress with an ink ribbon? Lucky for her, they had no idea, so she was able to survive for another 38 years. At least until she passed away in her sleep from congestive heart failure at the age of 83. Now, also apparently, this place is so haunted that even Harry Houdini went there. While he was alive, that is, not while he was dead. I just thought I should clarify that due to the claims that this place was Mecca for ghosts. Well, that's the claim at least. Now, I was originally planning to cover this story quickly in another episode of Silly Mysteries that pissed me off. But after going into it, I realized that the history of the Winchester house and its original owner, Sarah Sallie Lockwood Winchester, is actually quite interesting, but also quite tragic. And as is tradition, where there is tragedy, there is a grifter trying to profit off of it. And in this case, this grifter is trying to destroy and tarnish the life, memory, and character of Sarah Winchester, who by all accounts just seems to be a really fucking cool and good-hearted person. And therefore, I felt that this story deserved a full video all on its own. So let's expose yet another scam in the paranormal world with our latest installment of Phenomenasons. It's just a ripoff of CinemaSins. Let's begin. Sarah Lockwood Pardee was the fifth child born to Leonard and Sarah Pardee in the summer of 1839 in New Haven, Connecticut, where, as we all know, all the demons live. According at least to Ed and Lorraine Warren. Check out my Ed and Lorraine Warren series for more lols when you have time. It's 3 videos because they spoke a lot of bullshit. Now, although legally she was named Sarah, she was mostly referred to as Sallie her whole life. This was done to both distinguish her from her mother, also named Sarah, and to honor her grandmother, Sallie Pardee Goodyear. Sarah Winchester would even sign all of her correspondences using the name Sallie, so before this shit starts getting confusing, I'm just gonna refer to her as Sallie Winchester, the lady that built the big house.
Like a Tribe Called Quest, you say the whole thing. A pimp named Slickback.
Can we call you Slickback for short?
No, Nick.
Now, one point that gets brought up a lot in discussions about the Winchester house is that Sallie Winchester, the lady that built the big house, was exposed to a lot of friends and family dying, and this led to her becoming crazy and superstitious and going to mediums and whatever. While it's true that a lot of her close family died in a relatively short space of time, it's also false because she never became crazy or superstitious, according at least to people who actually knew her. There isn't a single report from a friend, a family member, or an employee that said that she was crazy or superstitious. All you'll find them saying is that she was kind and intelligent. Back to her childhood now. Sallie had 4 sisters and 1 brother who would all survive to adulthood. Only one of her sisters, her parents' first child, who was actually also legally named Sarah, died from cholera when she was just a year old. Meaning, Sallie Winchester, the lady that built the big house, wasn't even alive yet. And that's about the only death that occurred in her childhood, which she wasn't there for. Interestingly though, if you're familiar with the artist Salvador Dali, something similar happened to him. His older brother, also named Salvador, died before he was born. I suppose I should clarify, died before the artist Salvador was born, and his parents then gave him the same name. And then they would often tell him that he was the reincarnation of his dead brother. And this is thought to have greatly kinda sorta fucked him up, leading him to have a morbid obsession with time and mortality. But it also led him to becoming super rich, which, when you think about it, is something else he had in common with Sallie Winchester. And when you think about it a little too much, it's also something he had in common with these grifters who take advantage of people's morbid obsession with death and the afterlife and ghosts and all that kind of shit, and go through the market looking for a house that has a lot of rumors about it being haunted and all that kind of shit, then purchasing that house, and then they either try to make up a story about how they were attacked in the middle of the night by ghosts or whatever, or they charge people admission to come and look inside and sleep there. Now, this tangent's going on far too long, but I will show you proof later that if Sallie Winchester just built a weird house and nobody made up any fucking silly rumors about her, chances are good that you would have never ever heard about this fucking house in your life. And I have 2 examples of that I will show you later. I'd never heard about these places before, and they're basically the same thing. Now, the difference between Salvador Dali and Sallie Winchester, the lady that built the big house, is that it doesn't appear that her family told her that she was the reincarnation of her dead sister Sarah. But it is said that the Pardee family had particularly progressive ideas for the time regarding religion and philanthropic choices. They publicly expressed their opinions on things like abolition, suffrage, and animal rights, and as an adult, Sallie supported her sister Belle Merriman's animal rights activism. And Sallie is known to have chastised a boy who sought permission to hunt robins on her property. I like this lady. You know what? Sallie gets the Mystorian's official pap of approval. Lady Sallie Winchester, the lady that built the big house. It's getting a little long to say now. Anyways, moving on. It also appears as if Sallie had a fairly good upbringing, since her dad was a skilled craftsman who had an established business called Leonard Pardee and Company. They seem to have been pretty well off, and therefore Sallie was able to get educated, take music lessons, and even get a private French tutor. And Sallie would live with her family without any death and despair until about 1862, when she would get married to the 25-year-old William Wirt Winchester, when Sallie was just 14 years old. Moving swiftly on, William Winchester and Sallie had actually been childhood friends and neighbors, and oh my god, it gets worse. William was the son of a wealthy shirt manufacturer named Oliver Winchester, who would go on to establish the Winchester Repeating Arms Company 4 years later in 1866. Now, I don't want to dive too deep into the history of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, However, since all the people ever killed by one of these guns were coming to murk Sallie for no particular reason, even though she's not the one who started the company, not the one who ran the company, didn't even manage its operations after she inherited it, and she's not the one who designed the guns. But even still, the Winchester Repeating Arms Company is still a big part of the story. So basically, as far as I understand, the very famous gun people Smith & Wesson were trying to start up a manufacturer called the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company to produce volcanic lever-action rifles and pistols, and their largest stockholder or investor in this particular project was Oliver Winchester. Then sometime in 1856, this firm became insolvent, and Oliver and his business partner purchased all the assets from the other stockholders and reorganized this company as the New Haven's Arm Company in 1857. Then a bunch of other shit happened. Most notably, a guy named Benjamin Henry continued to work with Smith in his cartridge concept and perfected the much larger, more powerful 44 caliber Henry cartridge. In 1860, he would release the Henry rifle, which allowed a soldier to fire 16 shots before reloading and was used by a considerable amount of Union Army units in the American Civil War. Apparently, the Confederates called the Henry that damned Yankee rifle that they load on Sunday and shoot all week.
Like a Tribe Called Quest, you say the whole thing.
Then later in 1866, Henry got kinda pissy about what he thought was inadequate compensation from the company, since he did all the hard work figuring out how to make a gun you can load on Sunday and shoot all week. And so, he then attempted to have the Connecticut legislature award ownership of the New Haven Arms Company to him. Oliver Winchester then said, "Oh no, you fucking don't," then quickly came back to Connecticut from Europe to stop Henry. He obviously did, and he would then go on to once again reorganize the New Haven Arms Company, and this time called it the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Oliver then kept Henry's designs and improvements, and had those modified and improved just enough, I suppose, to call the designs his, and eventually he created the Model 1873. Which is commonly referred to as the Model 73, as well as the gun that won the West. Because that's just how the Winchester Repeating Arms Company marketed it. I know this has nothing to do with the ghosts, but I'm saying it anyways. So this marketing appears to have worked extremely well, and over 720,000 of these specific rifles were manufactured and sold between 1873 and 1923, as well as many other guns as well, of course. And thus, the Winchester Repeating Arms Company began printing money. Anyways, back to Sallie and William now. After getting married, they stayed with William's parents, and they had planned and hoped to build their own home together. However, this was not exactly possible at the time because of building material shortages due to the American Civil War. But after the war ended in 1866, the couple began construction on their new home. Then, on June 15th, 1866, Sallie gave birth to a baby girl that they named Annie, in honor of William's late sister who had died during childbirth. Unfortunately though, Annie suffered from something called marasmus, which is a severe form of protein energy malnutrition, and she died within a month of her birth. Understandably, they were both devastated by this, and they both withdrew from society, with Sallie remaining secluded for almost a year. But the one thing that Sallie still enjoyed, and arguably distracted her from her grief, was her love for architecture and design. So during the construction of their home on Prospect Hill in New Haven, Connecticut, the Winchesters both embraced learning more about construction, architecture, and design. Well. So the rumors that Sallie was told by a medium that she had to build a house continuously for 38 years seems to be a little less likely than the fact that Sallie just enjoyed architecture and design. According to actual records and not people's imaginations, architecture and design became lifelong hobbies for Sallie, who also learned about real estate investment and financial strategies from her husband William and her father-in-law Oliver. So Sallie and William's house was completed in 1868, was approximately 20,000 square feet, had over 20 rooms with marble floors, decorative fireplaces and chandeliers, large bay windows, plasterwork ceilings, and a circular drive in front. Sounds lovely, but also very big. I myself prefer a smaller space because I fucking hate cleaning. But then one day in June 1869, Sallie's father Leonard died at the age of 60, possibly from rheumatoid arthritis. When I read that, I was like, goddamn, how bad was his arthritis then? But since I'm not a doctor, I did look a little bit further into rheumatoid arthritis, and it seems that it can cause premature death, primarily through chronic systematic inflammation that damages the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. It increases risks of heart attacks, heart failure, and infections, and if you may recall, Sallie herself died in her sleep from congestive heart failure at the age of 83. And rheumatoid arthritis is unfortunately something that she had inherited from Leonard, or developed on her own. Let's not place the blame on anybody, because I'm not a fucking doctor, I don't know. Then nothing really major or noteworthy or anything seems to have happened for the next 11 years. Well, at least nothing that was documented. But then, oh my god, between 1880 and 1881, Sallie would lose 3 very close family members. First would be her mother Sarah, who died in May 1880. Second would be her father-in-law Oliver, who died in December that same year. And then, horribly, her husband William would die from tuberculosis in March 1881.
That was a lot, Robin.
Oh my.
Come on, Robin. I need you to go.
Yeah, it is a lot, considering it was basically her entire close family. So it's not hard to imagine that that would be pretty fucking heavy. But again, everybody who knew her personally said that she was kind, sane, and clear-headed. Also intelligent. Anyway, following the death of both Oliver and William in 1881, Sallie inherited her husband's entire estate, which back then was valued at $362,330. Which, by the way, let me just quickly add this here, was far fucking less than a lot of people assumed she inherited. But that seems to be the actual figure, and $362,000 back then would be something like $12 million today. However, this amount of $362,000 was including approximately $300,000 of stock that Sallie would only inherit when her mother-in-law died, which didn't happen until 1898, 17 years later. So the obvious question to ask then is, where in the blue hell did she get all the money to build this Resident Evil mansion? Well, she also got all of William's shares in the company, 777 of them, which I'm sure all the paranormal people were like, fuck, why wasn't it 666? That would have been perfect. But it was 777, valued at $77,700, which would be about $2.5 million today. And the shares that she now owned paid average dividends of about $7,770 annually between 1880 and 1885. So Sallie was getting something like $270,000 annually just from these shares. Now I suppose in the context of 2026, like 150 years later, this doesn't sound like a lot of money. However, it was a shitload of money back then. And again, because she was quite intelligent and a savvy businesswoman, she managed to make good use of that money and make a fuckload more. Moving on. Now, after losing 3 of her close family members, and a physician had recommended that she find a drier and warmer climate for her worsening rheumatoid arthritis, which, as you may recall, is what her father probably died of, Sallie decided to take the advice and move to California, the unsolved mysteries capital of the world. And using her love of architecture and design, she constructed and built her own mystery. I'm just kidding, that's what people's imaginations did. But now at the time, California was known as a place with a good climate, relatively cheap land for sale, and good soil for orchards. I, however, swear to God that there is something strange in the soil of California. Watch my Setagaya family video for more on that bit. But since Sallie had been to San Francisco before with her husband for a holiday and enjoyed it, she pulled the trigger on San Jose, California. What a silly little pun that was. But this is where one of the big claims of this urban legend just appears suddenly like a ghost. And ironically, just like a ghost isn't actually real. So the claim is Sallie met up with a medium. Now, according to Adrienne Hill on the Skeptical Inquirer, also she's the lady that rewrote a lot of the corrections on the Winchester Wikipedia pages, the claim goes a little like this. Sarah Winchester was not a churchgoer, but after the loss of so many family members, she went to a spiritualist medium apparently named Adam Coons, who worked and lived in Boston, and who convinced her to build a house for the spirits of all the people killed by rifles made by the Winchester Arms Company. Supposedly, Sarah Winchester felt tremendous guilt over the deaths caused by the rifles. Well, that is certainly one of the things ever said. Sadly, none of it is true, and here is the actual truth. Sallie's family were Baptist. When she moved to California, she was affiliated with the Episcopal Church, and after 1908, St. Paul's Parish in Burlingame. Hold on before you comment, I just checked, it's pronounced Burlingame. You can relax. Now Adrienne goes on to say that it is unlikely that Sallie felt any guilt about the deaths from the Winchester rifles whatsoever, because weapons were not socially maligned at the time and were in fact considered necessary for survival. Extensive research has not revealed any evidence that a medium named Adam Coons worked in Boston at that time, and furthermore, there is no evidence whatsoever that Sallie even ever visited a medium. And the origin of the name Adam Coons can actually be traced back to a book written by Susie Smith in 1967 called Prominent American Ghosts. What a fucking coincidence. So it would appear that Sallie just moved to California because she liked it there and it was better for her arthritis. Then in 1884, Mary Converse, her eldest sister, died of cancer, which then convinced Sallie's other sisters that they too should move to California to get away from all the death, despair, arthritis, and cancer. Now, since Sallie was loaded with cash, just another silly pun for you, she was able to pay for both of her sisters, Bella Merriman and Estelle Gerard, as well as their children, to move to California. Her other sister then, Nettie Spragg, also moved over to California since her husband Homer became the president of a college for young women in the San Francisco area. Sallie would then support all of her relatives financially for the rest of their lives. So, in my opinion, Sallie just sounds like a really nice person, and it's disgusting that people made up so much bullshit about her. Anyways, then about 2 years went by and nothing really noteworthy happened, but then in about 1886, Sallie bought a regular house on a massive 45-acre ranch for about $12,750. And my tiny-ass 70-square-foot apartment cost me about $60,000. But at least it takes me quicker to clean the house, you know? Yeah, I'll go with that. This was an 8-room farmhouse in the Santa Clara Valley, and was, by all accounts, not the most haunted house in America. Sallie would then name her estate Llanada Villa, since the area reminded her of the Llanada Alavesa in Spain, a place that she and her husband had visited sometime in the past. Pretty soon after moving in, Sallie started growing fruit. Apparently, she was one of the first in the area to do so, and she started up an orchard on her estate that sold apricots and prunes under her own orchard label, SPW Fruits. Business was apparently booming, because she would soon start hiring staff to help manage everything, probably to clean the big fucking house, but she also hired people to tend to the orchards. The first guy she hired was a guy named Ned Rambo, and he became the foreman of the farm. Now Ned actually already worked for the Winchester Repeating Arms Company as an agent, so now he was working 2 jobs. Poor fucking guy, but at least he lived up to the name Rambo. What a beast. Sallie then hired her rainsman or driver to work at the estate full-time, and this guy's name was Frank Carroll. Now again, because Sallie just seems to be a really nice person, she even supplied housing for him and his entire family. And then she started hiring more local people to staff the house and the farm, many of them coming from Europe, China, and even Japan. Now, it would be at some time around here that Sallie started planning to expand this farmhouse to such a size that it could accommodate her entire family, and within the first 6 months, she had increased the size of the house from 8 rooms to 26 rooms. And even though she would build a fuckload more rooms after that and expand this property even more, her entire family would never move in, because they said that they were scared of all of the zombies and that one room where the ceiling tries to kill you when you take the shotgun.
Hey, what's going on?
Jill? Is that you, Jill? What happened?
Harry, help me please. The door won't open. Quick!
Stay away from the door, Joe. I'm gonna kick this door down. Hurry! This way! That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
Oh, Barry!
Hold on, that's the wrong story. Ah yes, her family never moved in, partly due to the isolated location Llanada Villa was in, and partly due to quote-unquote constant construction, which was probably fucking irritating. However, this is something I can understand because when I moved into this place I'm staying now, they were still building some of the other apartments here, and there was trucks and drilling and grinding and hammering and people shouting all fucking day for months on end, and I was just so happy to leave this place to go work on a cruise ship somewhere in America for 6 months. And no, it's no better now that it's done, because now it's just farm animals and dogs making a noise all day, but what a pointless tangent this was. Eventually though, a couple of family members would actually move in and live with Sallie. The first to do so was Sallie's niece Maria Daisy Merriman, who moved in when she was about 21 years old in 1890. Amazing! My first question is, did Daisy ever say the Winchester Mystery House was haunted? No. Well, damn. Did she, I don't know, ever mention Sallie arranged meetings with mediums and psychics to make sure the souls of the damned were still unsure of her whereabouts? No. Did she mention anything about seances? No. Not even anything about as much as a fucking candle. Now, you may be wondering what's the significance of this. Well, firstly, she fucking lived there. But why would Daisy know about what Sallie was doing otherwise? Well, because she was Sallie's personal secretary and handled her correspondences and banking. But fair enough, Sallie could have done this secretly. She could have secretly have had seances and meetings with mediums, and she could have secretly hidden her 1,000 ghosts in her house somewhere, so that Daisy or anybody else who lived there didn't see them. Sounds pretty fucking stupid, doesn't it? Probably because it is. Anyways, moving on. Now, after hiring Daisy and all of these other people to tend to the house and the farms, Sallie had a little more free time to enjoy her hobbies, like architecture. And her staff and her employees that she was hiring would all recall that she would then start going to expositions that inspired her interior and exterior design. And as was tradition at the time, interior design was quite ostentatious, ornamental, and quite weird, I guess. But I don't know, I'm not an interior designer, so I can't really offer an opinion on this property. But doors on the second floor that lead to a fall to your death is quite an interesting design choice. What in the blue hell were you thinking with this one, Sallie? Well, again, maybe that was the idea. To confuse the ghosts and have them walk out the door and fall to their death. That's one fucking way to get rid of a ghost, to kill it. Or perhaps, just hear me out on this, perhaps there was another reason that this door leads to nowhere. Perhaps a groundbreaking reason. I'm talking about a fucking earthquake, but I'll get to that soon. Anyway, at some point throughout the construction, Sallie hired 2 architects, but clearly they were not up to her standards, so she told them to fuck off. So based on the assumption that she had high standards, this is probably why she just did all the planning and designing herself, and she would only take advice from the carpenters she hired, possibly because her dad was one, so maybe then she had a greater appreciation for them. I don't know. Either way, her interest in architecture was evident by her subscription to journals, including Architectural Record. So Sallie did all the drawings and design, but did not have an overall plan for the house. She worked room by room, and if she was unhappy with the results, she would tear down that section and rebuild it. Sometimes she would just abandon it for a while before returning to work on it again later. Therefore, the result was the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil. But hey, Sallie was having fun and she was doing her thing. And it was her house, she could do whatever the fuck she wanted with it. Who are we to come and tell an artist how to art? Then in about 1893, Sallie's younger sister Estelle became ill. Estelle then moved from San Francisco to Llanada Villa with the hope that the drier climate would improve her health. Sadly, it did not, and in January 1894, she died from cirrhosis despite being treated by Sallie's personal physician. By 1896, so about 2 years later, Sallie started adding additional floors to the house. In some areas, The house was 5 stories high, and she even added a 7-story tower that the San Jose News said was rebuilt 16 times before she was satisfied. I'm not sure how trustworthy the newspapers were at this time because, as we will see later, they were definitely full of shit. But we do know that Sallie did this. She did tear things down and rebuild them, so it's not impossible. But other than increasing the height of the building, she also added state-of-the-art plumbing and electrical systems for the time. She also designed and built an indoor garden with an irrigation system that watered the plants, and then sloped floors would channel the water towards trapdoors, which would then be piped down to outdoor flower boxes.
Oh, Barry, you saved me.
Yeah.
She also installed an annunciator, a common early version of the intercom, which she used to call employees. So far, there is no mention of anything that she built to please the spirits. This just seemed to be stuff that she built to please her. However, if we may refer back to the urban legend again real quick, a medium named Adam Coons told Sallie that she would need to have a house constantly being worked on or she would die. So let's quickly read a letter written by Sallie herself addressed to Jenny Bennett, who was actually William Winchester's sister. Quote, "I'm constantly having to make upheaval for some reason. For instance, my upper hall, which leads to the sleeping apartment, was rendered so unexpectedly dark by a little addition that after a number of people had missed their footing on the stairs, I decided that safety demanded something to be done."
This hall is dangerous.
So, damn, she wasn't trying to kill the ghosts. So over a year ago, I took out a wall and put in a skylight. Then I had to have plastering done, and as that could not well be done in the heat which succeeded, I had to wait for cooler weather. Then I became rather worn and tired out, and dismissed all the workmen to take such rest as I might through the winter. And there you have it, an original letter from Sallie Winchester herself, clearly stating that she did take breaks from construction. Therefore, this entire ghost story is bullshit. But we're not done yet. If these grifters think that they can tarnish this woman's reputation just so they can line their fucking pockets, then we're gonna keep going and we're gonna fucking tear it to pieces. 'Cause this is fucking bullshit. Sarah Winchester was a good person who did a lot of good things, and that deserves to be recognized. So stick with me if you feel the same way. However, this letter to Jenny Bennett proves that the foundation of this urban legend is false. But hey, I've got a lot more. Now, I've made several jokes already that the Winchester Mystery House is sort of like the Resident Evil mansion in the sense that it's a bit of a fucking mess in a way, and it's designed kind of like a maze or a puzzle. Therefore, people assume that Sallie did that to confuse the ghosts, much like how Capcom did that to confuse us. However, unusual asymmetrical design was not uncommon at the time. These are the 2 houses I was talking about earlier. Another lady named Elizabeth Colt from Hartford, Connecticut did the same thing here as Sallie and constructed a home over many years that was described as rambling and asymmetrical. There are even examples of houses in San Francisco, like the, I'm gonna butcher this, the Haas Lilienthal, that were described as crazy quilts being patched together. Just look at these things. It's really not that different from what Sallie Winchester was doing. But people don't talk about these places. What fucking ghosts were these people trying to hide from? None, that's the answer. Now, something else important to mention is that this is not the only property Sallie Winchester owned. She would end up owning plenty of other homes in her lifetime. Again, not that anyone really knows or speaks about those, which may be the reason that the ghosts never seem to follow her there. They just didn't know about it. But it's around about this time in the story that she started buying and investing in several other properties in California. In 1903, she purchased several properties in Atherton in San Mateo County, and she also purchased some land in the San Francisco Bay Area near Burlingame. Also around this time, Sallie's rheumatoid arthritis had disfigured her hands and feet, limiting her ability to walk and write. She was also losing her teeth and she required dentures. Now, if you know anyone who has suffered from this, then you would know that basic tasks like writing can be extremely fucking painful. So Sallie actually needed the help of a stenographer and her niece Daisy just to write letters. And also during this time in 1903, Sallie Winchester commissioned a fucking ark. Holy shit, this lady is so fucking cool. So an ark is otherwise known as a houseboat, which for some reason sounds less cool. But apparently owning an ark was quite the trend at the time. And if you too need to be trendy and cool and need an ark, don't worry, I got you covered. I know a guy. What a fucking dumb joke that was. Then in 1906, San Francisco would experience an earthquake that would cause massive damage to the Winchester Mystery House. Based on letters to a lawyer at the time of the earthquake, it is quite clear that Sallie was staying in her home in Atherton, which of course the ghosts who wanted to kill her didn't know about. And she was staying there with Daisy and Daisy's now husband, Frederick Marriott. But hilariously, after the earthquake wrecked the house, Sallie decided to stop construction again for a while. Sallie arranged though for the debris to get cleared and the home to be made safe again with only essential repairs. But these essential repairs did not include the water pipes that were left protruding the fucking house, and the second story doors, the ones that led to a fall to your death, only now led to nowhere because previously there were balconies there that had obviously fallen apart when the earthquake hit. And the staircases going up to just the ceiling were simply closed off instead of repairing and bracing the landing on the level above. So listen to this shit now. Because only essential repairs were done after the earthquake and she stopped construction on her home and she chose not to rebuild shit, local newspapers declared her a madwoman. The fucking proof that she stopped building and didn't fucking die has been there since 1906.
Good brain.
And still somehow, in 2026, 120 years later, this place is still considered one of the most haunted houses in America. But, whatever. Then in 1907, Sallie purchased a Tudor-style home in Burlingame Park, where she stayed while overseeing the dredging of a canal for her ark. Which, once again, the ghosts never knew about for some reason. But they somehow knew that she was the lady that married the son of the man who bought the business that employed the guy that modified the cartridge of the rifle that was initially conceived by the guy that established possibly the most famous gun brand in the world, Horace Smith, of course, Smith & Wesson. Does that make any sense? Not even a little bit. Why weren't the ghosts after Horace Smith? Why weren't they after Benjamin Henry? Why weren't they satisfied when both Oliver and William died? And since when do ghosts work this way? Thousands of ghosts ignoring the people who killed them, leaving the locations that they died, and coming to look for a lady who inherited shares. Since when do ghosts work this way? Then shortly after buying the Tudor home, Sallie bought another home at 44 Inglewood Lane. That became her full-time home. Now this home was so attractive, a photo of it was featured in the program for the Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915. Now I'm not going to pretend that I know what that is, but I'll put a photo of the house on the screen now if I can find one. Moving along to when things finally get ridiculous. In 1908, the first official mention of angry spirits haunting Sallie Winchester appeared in the San Francisco Examiner, spreading rumors that she was considering selling Llanada Via. These stories then of angry spirits finally spread to all the other properties she owned as well, and now there was even a new rumor that if she just as much as sold any of her other properties, the ghosts would murk her. And it's about at this time too that people started saying that she was involved with the occult. Now, Sallie read this shit in the newspaper, and because Lady Sallie Winchester was a total fucking badass, she went and sold one of her Atherton homes. And she survived. People then said, let's see. She has an ark, and the only logical explanation here is that she bought the boat after the earthquake out of fear of a biblical flood. This is funny because we already know that this is bullshit for two reasons. Firstly, she purchased a houseboat 2 years prior to the earthquake, and secondly, she commissioned it because it was fucking cool, and arks were trendy. Moving on then to the following year, 1909, Sallie's private rainsman and driver, Frank Carroll, died suddenly at the age of 50. After his passing, Sallie bought a new home for Frank's wife and children and continued to financially support them for the rest of their lives. Because again, she just seemed to be a really nice lady. And it would appear that it was the newspapers, in fact, who weren't very nice. These motherfuckers called her miserly and believed that she was up to weird shit because she was mostly unable to do anything due to her worsening rheumatoid arthritis. And they were unaware of a lot of the nice things that she actually was doing. So let's cover a few of the nice things that she was doing, shall we? Now, it was no secret that Sallie was quite wealthy because of her business ventures and income from the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. But like I said earlier, most people grossly overestimated the amount of money that she actually did have. And I also said that it was still a fuckload of money at the time. More money than most people back then and probably still now would know what to do with. But at the time of her death, her estate was worth something between $3 and $4 million. So if I am myself not mistaken about that figure, that's about $135 million in today's money. But she did not keep all of that to herself. She didn't only buy houses and invest in different projects and business ventures, and she didn't only just provide homes for and financially support her employees and some of her family members, she also anonymously donated a lot of her money. And this is something that Sallie did actually keep secret, but it's unclear if Daisy knew about it. But we know for sure that her lawyer, Frank Lieb, didn't know about it, and only discovered all of these anonymous donations after she passed away. So I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess that Daisy knew about it. However, Daisy's knowledge of this is only relevant in the context that I said earlier, saying that if Sallie was asking mediums and shit to come over to the house and do seances and stuff like that, and she would have to pay these people, Daisy would probably know about it. But whatever, that's not important now. What is important is that Sallie donated to a bunch of different relief efforts and social causes. But the largest donation that she made was to the tubercular ward in New Haven. Her first donation to them was $300,000, which she of course donated anonymously. But over a 10-year period, she ended up donating over $1 million to this hospital, which was finally opened on April 4th, 1918 and known as the William Wirt Winchester Hospital. Now, unfortunately at that time of her life, she wasn't well enough to attend the dedication ceremony. But of course, it goes without saying that without her contribution, it's not clear if that place would have transformed into a hospital that is still there in use today. This hospital, the William Wirt Winchester Hospital, eventually became part of the Yale School of Medicine in 1948 and is still there now in the form of the West Haven Medical Center. But anyway, we're jumping a bit too far ahead now because we have to address the allegations by the press. So the rumors spread about her said that she was mentally unstable and filled with superstition, guilt, and fear. However, not a single one of her employees ever agreed with that, and in fact, just said the opposite. She was intelligent, kind, and most importantly, not superstitious at all. And as we're going to see in just a minute or two, these claims actually pissed her friends, family, and employees off. Oh, and of course, one more thing before I forget. The press are also the ones that spread the rumor that Sallie Winchester was having nightly seances with the spirits. Yeah, the spirits that she was apparently trying to hide from and confuse, so what the fuck sense does that make?
This house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
And also, the room that she apparently used actually turned out to be her gardener's bedroom. So, where the fuck did the gardener go when she was doing these seances then? Cause surely, you're not doing a seance in the middle of the day when the guy's out there in the orchard tending to the fucking apricots. And then also surely, the gardener is not out in the orchards tending to the apricots at midnight or whatever time she was supposedly holding these seances. And if she was, she would have surely had to have told him every night, hey, can you please fuck off for a little while because I have something important to do in your bedroom. To which I'm sure the gardener would have asked, what? And why? This is the room you've given me. If you want it so badly, why don't you give me another room? Or hey, here's an even better idea. Why don't you go to one of your other 160 rooms in this house to do your shit? And one last thing here, most importantly, the gardener would have then either known about the seances or suspected that Sallie was up to something. And he never mentioned anything to anyone. Well, alright, let's try to get back on track again, shall we? Sometime in 1911, Sallie's health began to improve somewhat, allowing her to actually do things with her hands again, like sewing. The newspapers, however, said that she was close to death. Suppose it depends on your definition of close, but Sallie lived for another 11 years, passing away in her sleep from congestive heart failure on September 5th, 1922. In her will, she named her 5 closest employees as well as all of her living family members. Daisy inherited a home in Palo Alto and the contents of all Sallie's other homes. And Sallie also wrote in her will that any remaining money left in the trust that she set up for family members was to be given to the William Wirt Winchester Hospital when they too passed on. Pretty fair and reasonable requests, and the will concluded by saying that if anyone disputed her wishes, they would receive nothing. Which I guess again is a fair and reasonable request. But there was one final thing that was quite interesting. Her will also demanded that Llanada Villa be sold, since none of her relatives could afford to maintain or repair it. However, since there were no buyers interested in this house, investors just began dividing up the now, post-expansion, 160-acre estate. Then on December 15th, 1922, an auction sale of the property and its surrounding acreage was finalized, which further divided up the property. And then, in April 1923, John and Mame Brown leased Llanada Villa and its remaining grounds from this group of investors and moved their family onto the estate. Within just 9 months of Sallie's passing, the Winchester Mystery House had been turned into a tourist attraction.
Oh my God!
It's awful.
To give you an idea of the idea they had ideas to put up a fucking roller coaster there. But since that was really expensive, the attraction was just pretty much the grounds itself. The ads promised dancing, good eats, games, and picnic grounds. However, in time, as locals shared the bullshit rumors of Sarah Winchester that they had heard, they started begging the owners to see the inside. And this is when the Browns realized that they were sitting on a gold mine. Then on June 30th, 1923, the Winchester Mystery House opened for its first public tour. And just take a fucking guess at how many people showed up on the very first day. Apparently, 10,000. All the rumors had once again come to light, and now that people could see the quote-unquote strange features of the house for themselves, they were absolutely sure that Sallie was fucking nuts. However, past neighbors, friends, family, and employees were all pissed to read about the claims being made about both the house and Sallie, and were even more upset that the Browns were making money from falsehoods. This absolute bullshit became such a hot topic that Harry Houdini himself came over to the Winchester Mystery House to expose all the tricks and bullshittery there. But interestingly, he never did. Ironically, his visit only made this place more famous and more mysterious. But speaking of mysteries, people don't even know exactly when Houdini visited the Winchester Mystery House. But the best guess is October 29th, 1924. According to wildabouthoudini.com, who found an excerpt from the April 1938 edition of the Genie magazine, quote, "The house is of particular interest to magicians because Houdini played an engagement in San Jose about 1924. He visited the house as a guest of 2 local magicians in the various rooms that Mrs. Winchester was supposed to have communed with the spirits. Houdini made his visit at midnight and apparently was impressed with the house and its peculiar arrangements, but engagements prevented his allowing for more time for his investigation of the exposure of trickery or mediums." End quote. Wild About Houdini then goes on to explain how they kinda put together that he probably visited on October 29th, 1924. It's pretty cool. If you want to read about it, check the website out. But there you go. Houdini didn't say anything about the Winchester Mystery House because he was a busy man. So while it's true that Houdini didn't expose this place, and it doesn't really seem like he said too much about it, but the one thing that people can find regarding his thoughts about this place is that he just basically thought that the tour operators used the term Winchester Mystery House as a promotional name for the property. By the way, the tour operator at the time was Mame Brown, the owner. And I guess just like the Winchester Model 1873, that marketing campaign seems to have worked very well because John and Mame Brown, who originally could not afford to buy this place, only lease it, ended up fucking purchasing it in 1931. And then they even added and removed things that Sallie had done. So now it's not even her complete original house anymore, which is fair enough, she doesn't own it anymore. But they promote the property as the Winchester Mystery House. Furthermore, the paranormal element was heavily focused on in all the marketing throughout the 70s and 80s, and even large billboards were set up along highways, and these billboards featured a silhouetted house with implications that a ghost encounter was possible, which unsurprisingly increased the attendance. Because we just have a morbid fascination with death, the afterlife, and bullshit. But since 2022, the house has been owned and operated by Winchester Mystery House LLC, a private company that represents the descendants of the Browns. So this place has been in business for a long time. Now, according to author Mary Jo Ignoffo, who actually spoke and interviewed some of the tour guides, the tour guides are required to follow a script emphasizing fabrications and inaccuracies. According to Mary Jo, one guide even confessed, quote, "I feel so torn because I have to tell people untruths." It's a nice way of saying lies, but every time I go through the house and have to talk about 13s and other kooky things, my heart breaks a little for Sarah. I have to bite my tongue every time I hear a guest say, "What a nutcase," end quote. Yeah, it's amazing how none of Sallie's employees said any shit like this to anybody, but Winchester Mystery House tour guides do. Now, according to Adrienne Hill again on the Skeptical Inquirer, quote, "According to a carpenter named James Perkins, who worked on the property for many years, these features appearing in 13s were additions to the home after Sallie Winchester had died. The workmanship that Sallie expected for her home was exceptional. An imported German 12-candle chandelier now showcases an additional, sloppily added 13th candle. If Sallie truly wanted a chandelier with 13 candles, she could have afforded it and ordered a custom one." Now, Adrienne also mentions in her article that while on a tour there for herself, she noticed many things that were not grouped in 13s. While passing through a room before going into the so-called seance room, there were 5 hooks that were ignored. Quote, "All but one of the many staircases we walked up or down had more or fewer than 13 stairs. And one that was claimed to have 13 stairs was really 14 stairs. Perhaps the fact that you had to turn a corner before going down the last step disqualified it from being counted." To quote fellow tour attendee Jane Selke, "Both tours were based on a lot of making something out of nothing." And that sums it up very nicely, doesn't it? So I think we've proven that the Winchester Mystery House is a little bit of a scam. That being said though, I would have been willing to go on a tour myself if I ever went back to California for whatever reason. Not to see the ghosts, I don't fucking care about the ghosts, just to see the shit that she was building. But since parts have been added and removed by the Browns, and this is not necessarily Sallie Winchester's original vision, it's just so hard to care now. So I'll probably never take that tour. Well, anyway, that's 40 reasons that the Winchester Mystery House is a total scam, or whatever the title was. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe for more bullshit from the Mystorian.
And if you don't, you